Thanks for coming. I wanted to introduce Rebecca really quick. I was introduced to her through one of my staff as the bug lady. So, hey, some lady brought in some bugs. So, as it turns out, she brought in a whole bunch of monarch butterfly caterpillars. And we got to watch them pupate and grow and then release them. It was quite the extraordinary event, or series of events. That being said, Rebecca is a master gardener, and she's a Malden native, grew up here in town. She's currently living in Kansas. But what I'm hoping is that you'll welcome her kindly back to town, and I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll see if I don't fall off the stage. Again, I am Rebecca, and I have been, I've always loved butterflies, but it was just one of those happenstance. I had a garden class in my neighborhood, and the speaker came, and her topic was butterflies, and it just fascinated me. So of course after that you had to figure out, well then how do I get them to my yard? So that's one of the topics that I'd like to kind of talk about. Hold on, let me make sure I got this all set up here. Did I turn it off? Okay, so we're going to kind of go through a little bit of a basic, because you got to know a little bit of the basics before we find out how we get them in our yard. So let me get started. All right, well, let's just start with the basics. What is a pollinator? So a lot of times when you hear pollinators, you're going to probably naturally think your bees and your butterflies. Well, that is two pollinators, but there's so many other things that are out there. But by definition, a pollinator is an animal or an insect that helps to move pollen from one flower to another. So you kind of think about, what about those big bumblebees? You know, they're kind of clumsy and they're all really hairy. They're a fantastic pollinator. They're going from flower to flower, and each flower, as they're getting their food, they're getting that dust all over their bodies. It's collecting on their legs, it's on their body, but they'll go to the next flower. Well, just think about, they're pollinating. They're doing something while eating, and it's fantastic. But some of the other pollinators, obviously bees, flies, wasps, beetles, even ants. And I was shocked, birds and bats. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really see birds and bats going to my flowers, but they do. So by definition, they're a pollinator. They're helping to pollinate our plants. The objective is, obviously, to fertilize the plants, which makes seeds and the fruit. Now, okay, that makes sense. Well, then we should thank our pollinators, because half of what we eat is something that would have had to have been pollinated by something. So I'm like, all right, that makes sense. But when you think about, if we didn't have pollinators, a lot of our fruits and our vegetables and a lot of the chocolate one, I'm like, all right, well, technically, yes, chocolate is a plant and it has to be pollinated. So I just was in awe of understanding that the usefulness of pollinators in general. So a friend of mine mentioned that, well, when you think about pollinators, all right, wasps and bees and flies, all right, I really don't want to study about flies, all right? But let's start with the monarch butterfly. It's the pretty pollinator. We've been told it's the gateway insect into pollinators. So we're going to learn about the fun ones, but just know that they're not the only pollinator that is out there. So we're going to learn about the monarch. So the monarch itself, it does go through, let me back up, butterflies and moths do go through, am I still on? Oh, okay. Does go through a complete metamorphosis. By definition, that's 4 life stages. So let's think about the female butterfly will come to a host plant, which we'll learn about shortly, but lay her egg. She'll potentially could lay multiple eggs on the same plant, but it's a specific plant to that specific butterfly. But in this case, she'll lay her egg, she'll fly away. That mother will never see that egg again. But if it's on the right plant, that egg, after 4 to 5 days, will become a larva or a caterpillar. So while it's on that plant, it's going to eat and eat. Oh yeah, and eat. So it'll be there 10 to 14 days. Usually when it's really the hot peak of the summer, that tends to be the 10 days. So that's really exciting for me because it goes a lot faster. But when the days start getting shorter and the nights are a little cooler, things start to slow down. So that becomes more of the 14 days for that step. But after it's done being a caterpillar, it'll take a little rest and then immediately go into the chrysalis phase. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about moths, but the difference between a butterfly and a moth is, if you think about a butterfly, I guess I always just thought it's a cocoon. Well, butterflies make a chrysalis, which means it's a caterpillar and then it just wiggles, and it wiggles out of its skin, and what's beneath that becomes the chrysalis. A moth, on the other hand, usually will have like a silk, a filament, we'll say gland by their mouth, and then they'll actually spin its own cocoon. So that, by definition, is the difference between a moth and a caterpillar. But the moth does go through the same similar stages. But in this case, the chrysalis is basically its home away from home while it is in there cooking, shall we say, but it hangs there for anywhere 10 to 14 days as well. So the monarch itself, I really don't know why it's green. I hear people ask me that all the time, and I'm like, I really don't know. But inside that chrysalis is goo. So if for some reason it got damaged and it fell on the floor, I mean, it's goo. But just imagine, all those cells are moving around and it knows where to go. So when it comes time to come out of that chrysalis, you've got a beautiful butterfly. So after the chrysalis, obviously adult butterfly. Now it is listed here as anywhere from 1 to 9 months. That's a big range. Well, monarch caterpillar, there's 5 generations of them in a year. So right now, obviously we're starting to see the monarchs. I'd say over the next 2 weeks, you're going to be seeing them because they're going to be coming through our area, which we'll talk about in a second, of the migration. Monarchs migrate to Mexico. And I know that there is a West Coast part of monarchs as well. They migrate to Southern California, as well as there is a bit that does go to Southern Florida. But we're going to primarily talk about, we'll say, the Midwest monarchs as they go down toward Mexico. But obviously they start out as an egg. Those little eggs are smaller than a sesame seed. So in all honesty, unless I'm out there and I see a female over there on the milkweed putting her egg on the plant, I really don't notice that it's there. I can go and flip over the leaf, and look on the underside, and it's this itty bitty white, it looks like a football on the underside of a leaf. But if I don't know it's there, I might not notice it until the egg hatches, and out comes this itty bitty little caterpillar. That caterpillar is smaller than a grain of rice. So again, you don't know it's there, you probably don't notice that you have a caterpillar. But again, 4 to 5 days. So then you have the caterpillars. So what you're going to notice here is the big guys in the upper corner. They eat a lot of milkweed. So if raising monarchs is something that interests you, you need a lot of milkweed. And you want to know for sure that your milkweed is healthy. So I choose to grow my own milkweed, and I just make sure I have an abundance of that. If you want to get into it, make sure that you have some friends in case you run out of milkweed or your friend runs out of milkweed. You can be the milkweed hookup. But they do, again, eat a lot. There are some milkweed that, there's a bunch of perennial milkweed, which is fantastic, which means, once you get it planted, you don't have to plant it, obviously, year after year. But it's really happy, the milkweed itself is really good early spring to early summer. But by now, when you see that milkweed, it's dried, and honestly, the caterpillars really don't love that as much. So I choose to also plant annual milkweed. And that would be like a tropical, or there's a balloon flower, and that way right now as the monarchs are coming south, I have some food for their caterpillars. So they're going to come and hang out in my yard, drop their eggs off, and then I get to raise them. There is another milkweed that I recently have learned about, and it is actually called honeyvine. I actually thought it was weed. I thought it was bindweed. So if anybody knows what bindweed is, it looks very similar to bindweed. Bindweed is a vine, but it looks like it has points it looks like a heart, but with points. Okay, well, they don't want that. They want honeyvine, which actually looks like a heart. So if you'd like to see what it looks like, that's what my monarch caterpillars over on the table are eating right now, because I don't have happy milkweed right now because all the milkweed that I had in my yard was perennial and it's dry. But as we talked about those itty bitty caterpillars, if you don't notice it, first thing I notice is that leaf in the middle. I mean, those are teeny tiny caterpillars. So if I start to see holes in the middle of my leaf, I will flip it over, and that's when I can see that itty bitty caterpillar. So when they're little, they make holes. As they get bigger, those caterpillars, when they're eating, it's the funniest thing. Obviously, everyone who knows what a typewriter is, they eat like a typewriter. They're just, they stop, they go back to the beginning. It is the funniest thing to watch caterpillars eat, but they eat and eat. After they're done eating, they will rest a little bit, and they'll go to the top of a cage, and then they hang upside down, and it kind of looks like they're turning into a J, but they'll attach by their feet, and they'll hang from a surface. So it could be on the underside of your gutter. It could be on a fence post. I mean, it could be anywhere, wherever they feel safe to turn into a butterfly. To turn into a chrysalis. And when it's time, it will kind of go limp, and it literally will walk out of its skin. And we'll watch a little video shortly, but it just starts to wiggle. And as it wiggles, that skin just kind of goes up. I mean, it's got to be some amazing set of clothing that this caterpillar wears, because it just comes up, falls off, and then all of a sudden it's green. This one I don't really have to explain because the visualization is just beautiful. So it stays green for the majority of the time that it is in a chrysalis. Then all of a sudden it starts to turn opaque. You can start to see the wing pattern. That is so exciting, and obviously just slowly but surely it will emerge. And as it emerges, it will come out head first. And then as it comes out, it hangs. Now, what you'll notice on these bottom pictures, that butterfly comes out. I mean, that chrysalis is itty bitty, and we're talking about a butterfly. That's a pretty good size thing. It comes out, its body is huge, but it has these itty bitty wings. So of course you're like, oh no, there's something wrong with, no. Immediately, it starts pumping that fluid from its torso out to the wings. It needs gravity to help its wings go straight. So it takes about 4.5 minutes for it to pop out of the chrysalis, hang upside down, and all of a sudden the wings are completely flat. It is amazing to see. So as you can see here, it just kind of hangs. Once it's done completely, the wings are no longer wrinkled. It will hang there for a couple hours, because at that point, their wings are like wet noodles. I mean, it can't fly, so technically, if a bird found it, the bird could eat it. It won't be a happy bird because the milkweed is poisonous. So even as a butterfly, it is poisonous to a bird. It won't kill it, but it might upset its stomach. So at the same point as a caterpillar, if a bird eats one monarch caterpillar, it won't eat another one. So it's a lesson. I find this very fun because now when I'm out and I see monarchs fluttering around, I can see from a distance, is that a boy or a girl? So the neatest thing to see, when butterflies are resting, their wings are closed. But when it is eating, it'll open its wings and kind of flutter. What I see here is the lines within the wings of the female, they're thicker. The lines within the male, it's a little thinner, but then its lower two wings kind of have two black dots. And that really is the only difference you're going to be able to see between a female and a male. They're the same size, they fly the same way. But supposedly that's a scent gland. So on the back of those wings of that male, I mean, I kind of joke and say it's his Axe body spray. That's what he's going to attract the females to him, that type of thing. But it is a scent gland. So beyond that, there is your full monarch history or lesson there. But the neat thing about monarchs, in 1 year, there's 5 generations. So right now, we're in the middle of, we'll call it the super generation. These are the ones that's born here in the Midwest, anywhere from August to October. They are, right now, I've got some here that we'll be releasing this evening with hopes that they're going to go to Mexico. This is the super generation, so they can live up to 9 months. So if you think about it, they're going to head south. They'll probably make it into Mexico around the early part of November. That is, in Mexico, that's near the Day of the Dead. That's one of their big holidays. And the idea is those monarchs are coming back into Mexico with their loved ones' spirits on their wings, or I've even heard those monarchs are their loved ones. So I love that. I think that's so beautiful. But they go down to southern Mexico, and there's these trees in the middle of the rainforest, and they're basically like a fir tree, and it's called an oyamel tree. And they'll go up there, and they'll just cluster. They really don't do much because they've eaten all the way down to Mexico. So they've built up all of this energy, and they just hang there, and they kind of go dormant until it's time for them to reawaken. So as again, we call it the super generation, but they're gonna, go south. So the idea is all along the way, we need to have flowering plants. Well, I don't know about you, but my garden's looking great, but in the next couple weeks, that stuff's gonna start to putter out. We're gonna start not having some blooms and stuff, and you're gonna have some late monarchs still coming through. So one of our favorite ones is the asters. So asters is one of the plants that we like, and it's a late bloomer, so it's always got some different butterflies on it. But what you can see on the map over here is, they do go all the way up into Canada, and they still have to make their trek back down south. So if you think about Oklahoma, even into Tennessee, it's just going to eventually become a funnel all the way down into Texas, and then that's just going to get denser and denser. So for the next couple of weeks, you're going to see a lot of monarchs fluttering through here because you're on the migratory path of the monarch, and that's so exciting. So keep an eye out. If you see trees covered in orange, it might not be leaves. It might be the monarchs. So here is a video. So let's see if I get this right. So just a little fast, little fun little video. So the next part of this presentation, I kind of want to just talk about some of the butterflies that I happen to see when I'm down here visiting, and some of the ones that I'm sure that you probably see in your yards as well. Obviously, this is just a snapshot, but some of the butterflies and the corresponding caterpillars. I probably could do a presentation for every single one of these because they're so fascinating. So I try to make them a little bit more general here, but if you have any questions, just catch me after. You could ask the questions. As you can tell, I might like this topic just slightly. All right, so these two I wanted to put together. Obviously, we've already gone through the monarch, so we won't spend too much time on that, but to see it side by side with the eastern black swallowtail. Sometimes people call that the parsley worm. It's the one that's out there any time of, a lot of your favorite herbs, that he's eating it. That's what he likes. So it's the carrot family. That's your parsley, your dill, your fennel, your rue, and your Queen Anne's lace. We see that on the, on the sides by like farmers' fields. That's a host plant for the swallowtails. So when in a pinch, that's what I use to feed my caterpillars, and they absolutely love it. Now, what's neat about the monarch and the eastern black swallowtail, as we mentioned earlier, the monarch is the one where the milkweed inside of the plant, which we'll talk about, is actually, I should mention that, excuse me. The host plant for a monarch is milkweed. That's the only thing that particular butterfly will eat. There's different types of milkweed that's out there, but that's the only plant that it will eat. So obviously when the female's in your yard, she's flying around, she can sense it, she can smell it. So when she finds it, if she wants to lay eggs in your yard, she'll do that. But the caterpillar on the top is actually the monarch. So as we mentioned that the milkweed is poisonous, that makes the caterpillar poisonous. If a bird eats it, he's going to get sick. The caterpillar on the bottom is your eastern black swallowtail. I haven't actually eaten a caterpillar, but I hear that they're delicious. So that caterpillar actually mimics the monarch, and that's why his coloration is very similar. But in the regards, the bottom one, he is not poisonous, but he mimics the monarch. So I like to see them, the two of them together, because I guess seeing them separate, I never really noticed that they do sort of look similar. But yes, so your eastern black swallowtail butterfly is one that you're going to find out here, because we do plant a lot of these herbs, and that's what it's going to be eating. Two of the other ones that I have raised both of these, and they have amazing caterpillars. Again, could have done another presentation on these two in particular, but the giant swallowtail is one of the ones that is really a cool one for me. It also will eat rue, and rue is it's an herb in some cultures, but it is a very neat, almost like a woody plant. But both this one and then the eastern black that we just talked about on the previous slide, that's a host plant for both of them. So there, if you can plant one host plant, you can actually get two different types of butterfly. The fun fact about the giant, that's actually the biggest butterfly in North America. So he's pretty good size. The chrysalis is a little bit bigger than some of the eastern blacks, but it is a beautiful butterfly. The spicebush swallowtail, southern Missouri, you're graced with this. If you have the spicebush, you can have the spicebush caterpillars. Kansas City doesn't really have those too much, so I like to come down here and look for spicebushes in the fence line. It is a understory tree, so if you have a tree or bush, but if you would like a fun butterfly, this one's really fun. It's big green, has some fake eyes on the top of it, just looks really kind of cute and fun. But I do like that one. Couple more swallowtails that you probably have seen fluttering around. The yellow one on the left, the tiger swallowtail, I always say tiger swallowtail tree, because that's what it's going to be eating, so a lot of trees. And it also is a very fun one. It will usually be up very high up in the tree, but on occasion you'll see it kind of come down. If you have little seedlings beneath it, those are the best times to go and look at the seedlings, because obviously that's what the mother is going to be putting her eggs on, is some of that really soft, those soft leaves. I have not been blessed yet to have any type of property that has a pawpaw tree, but I will definitely do that as soon as possible. But I love the zebra swallowtails. And if you notice, all of these swallowtails that we've talked about, they obviously have those little tails. So we think about the swallowtail bird, has some really long, kind of sharp wings. That's what you're going to get out of these caterpillars as well. So a couple of the other ones that you're going to see potentially in your yard is your painted lady and the common buckeye. Also, these are two that I have not raised, but I see them all the time in my yard, so that means they're out there somewhere. But if you think about it, I do a lot of hollyhocks, but I haven't actually seen the caterpillars on my hollyhocks. But thistle's in a lot of our, crop rows and the ditches and stuff. That's the one that's right now really kind of purpley, little thuggish. So if you don't want it to kind of take over your yard, don't put it in your yard, but it has a purpose. But then obviously plantains and snapdragons is for the common buckeyes. But just look at these wing patterns. This is so beautiful, and they're so different, but just each one of them is just so neat to learn about. This is one that actually at Mom and Dad's house, we have a lot of passion flower. So I wanted to show you what this is. I don't know if you've ever seen this one before, but it is sort of a vine. It can be a little thuggish, but you do get these two beautiful butterflies, and they have the funnest little caterpillars, little spikes, but you touch it, it's like velvet. But right now they're just fluttering around. They're going to be out there and getting sunflowers and getting all of the nectar and everything. These two actually do go south. They don't migrate all the way to Mexico, but probably near the coastlines, and that's where they'll overwinter, and then springtime they'll kind of come back up north a little bit. But two very, very amazing butterflies as well. Wanted to talk a little bit about some moths, because moths also, again, are pollinators. They are very interesting, but I have had the pleasure of raising both of these, and they've been very fun. The Polyphemus moth, big oak caterpillar. I mean, oh my gosh, eats a lot. I was feeding them on pin oak, And oh my gosh, good size. I thought that was like huge. And then I got introduced to the Cecropia. Cecropia is even bigger. So that's the biggest moth in North America. And whoever designed this is amazing. So reds and blues and teals and greens. I'm like, this is really cool. It was eating wild cherry. And it ate so much wild cherry that I was going over, let's see if I get this right, to my boss's neighbor's house almost every other day and literally raising the canopy on his tree because I had 4 or 5 caterpillars at that time. But he knew where I could get food for it, and so I got to raise the Cecropias. So one of the biggest questions, how do I get pollinators and butterflies into my yard? The first class that I took, and I said that this lady said to me, if you feed them, they will come. All right, what? What are you going to feed them? Well, if you want to feed the butterflies and the pollinators, you need to select nectar plants. So, and you need plants specifically that's going to bloom at different times. If you love sunflowers, that's great. But think about it, it's only going to bloom at a certain time. So you have to think about, okay, well, what's going to bloom in May? What's going to bloom in June? And just have some nice transitions, just something that you're going to have, actually something that's going to be flowering all the way until frost. That's going to be the best for all of your pollinators. Because you think about, your bees are some of your first insects that's going to come out, and especially when you have warm days. Well, what's the first thing that we have out in our yards? Dandelions. Dandelions, while some of us, we don't love it, that's actually going to be nectar. That's where your bees are going to go and get some of its pollen for them as they start to wake up. Same thing with the asters. I mean, you got to have some flowering things for the pollinators to be able to do what we need them to do during our crop seasons. But I like to say, diversity is key. So you need the different blooms, different colors, different plant sizes, and different bloom types. So if you think about bloom types, so some flowers have the flower and then you have that long trumpet in the end. Well, think about those long trumpets. I'm trying to think of an example. Yes. There you go, yellow squash. Think about some of the little insects. I mean, they have to literally crawl all the way down into that flower to get nectar. And what's it doing when it's in there? It's rubbing against the side and it's getting that pollen all over it. But in the same regards, those trumpeted flowers, those are perfect for your hummingbirds. That's perfect for your butterflies because they all have either the long tongue, which is your hummingbird, or the butterflies have something called a proboscis. That's its tongue. So if you look at a butterfly's face, it's all whirled up. It looks like a little circle. But when it's out there and it's finding a flower, its little tongue is just going crazy. And it can get down in that big, long, trumpeted plant, and it can get its food. So if you want to raise butterflies, then you need to select a variety of host plants. So those other earlier screen slides, it did mention host plants, but there is something specific for each of those butterflies. And I think we have a pamphlet, so if that interests you, we'll make sure to send you home with one that gives you some nice examples of which butterfly likes which butterfly's caterpillar likes which plant. So that way you can make sure to get the right ones in that regards. But the biggest thing here is if you do want to raise butterflies, not only do you need host plants, but you need the nectar plants as well. And that's what we just talked about, is something that blooms constantly, or at least blooms a big portion of the year, because you need to bring the adults to the yard. So it's going to get your plants, your flowers, and get the nectar. And then the females are going to sense, hey, I can put my eggs over here. And then they'll gift you the opportunity to raise their children. So pollinator gardening, just in general. I mean, your garden can be any size. I mean, it could be a window box, it could be a flower pot on your front porch, but it could even be a wild corner of your garden. So it can be any size. Make it your own, and nature will find your plants. I like to always say, obviously caution the use of pesticides because the chemicals will harm your beneficial insects. So including the ones you are trying to raise. So it's one of those, if you do want them to your yard, let's keep them safe. And okay, I can live with ants. I can live with some of the other nuisance insects that I don't find exciting, but they have a purpose in life, but they also are keeping all of your insects safe. The same goes with even if you do a grass spray, that's going to get some of the grubs. Some of the moths that I didn't talk about, but there are some moths that goes out there that will burrow under the ground as a pupa stage. So tomato hornworms, okay, they have a purpose. When they're done being a caterpillar, they'll actually go underground, and they live underground, especially when they overwinter. They come out. It's a really beautiful, very large moth that flies around, has a purpose, and does its thing. But if we treat the grasses, then unfortunately we do kill a lot of beneficial insects.